Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I am your host, G1. As always, I hope you're having a good week. Been a wild ride for the last couple of weeks for me. Hurricane weather and all kinds of other things going on in life, as well as the job situation still unfortunately unchanged. But all in all, I'm thankful for everything. Nothing that has happened to me and mine will be really a permanent thing. Things will improve, so we keep going, and that is the message that resonates with me this week as I watch this devastation that has happened to mountain communities that are within a stone's throw of me. Okay, very close. People that I know have been impacted by the storm and the damage, the flooding and power outages. Landslides have caused major damage. If you've seen the photos and videos from western North Carolina, as well as all down the path of Hellene, then you can't help but be moved by what has happened. Understand that behind every video and photo, there's people whose lives are forever changed. Either because they have lost, some have lost everything, the material things, or even because they've lost something even more important. We don't know the real death toll yet. It's more than what is being reported, that is for sure. It's likely much higher than we will ever be told by the media. Keep every one of those people in your thoughts this week. This is going to be a long road to recovery, and in fact, many may not ever fully recover from it. But that's the topic for the day. We're going to talk about the storm. We're going to dig into the response to this devastation, because there are a lot of rumors and stories out there. There are a lot of official narrative, and something in the middle there is the truth. So first off, let's address the rumors and stories situation. Folks, I have spoken about this before on the show, and this is a skill that you just need to develop over time. It's not something that's easy to do. We all have preconceived ideas about things. We all have expectations, and so when we hear information that fits into those perceptions, it's very natural for us to accept it with little skepticism. And unfortunately, skepticism is exactly what is called for in these times. When we see information or hear information, we need to recognize that the person passing that on may or may not be aware of how factual it is. They likely are just repeating something that they heard in good faith. I'm not ascribing malicious activity here. They're trying to be helpful and keep people informed, but they might be passing on information that might be vague or incomplete. It could be disinformation planted by people to cause problems. We don't know. It could just be misinterpretation of what someone said or what someone saw. There's all kinds of scenarios there. That's just really just kind of a long way of saying be careful of what you're reading and what you're sharing, because it may be bad data. And in these times of crisis, these times of trouble, bad data causes bad decision making. It causes all kinds of problems. For example, there's a picture of a young girl floating around, and no pun intended there, floating around on the internet. I've seen it posted by multiple people, and she's crying. She has her little dog with her. She's wearing a life vest, and it looks like she's in a canoe and she's being rescued. It's very heartbreaking. But the problem is it's not real. It's an AI-generated photo. Now, I don't have any issues with someone making the photo. There's a lot of valid reasons for somebody to do that. But once you put it out on the internet, people are going to take it and do with it what they will. You no longer have control over something that you put out there, something that you might have put out as an illustration, or you had good intentions. Hey, I couldn't find a photo that showed this, and I wanted to show this, and so I made the picture, and I'm using it to illustrate something. The perfectly innocent intentions, but the problem is that people will pass that picture along, and they might do something else with it, and that picture, it shapes the mindset of others. It shapes the actions of others. Now, in this case, I think that shaping is more than likely going to be a good thing. If seeing that AI photo prompts people to donate money to a reputable organization, or better yet, their church relief fund, or to even pack up and go help directly, well, then that's a positive outcome from it. It's a good thing. It's still a fake photo, and it's likely not to be used for that. It's likely going to be used to scam money from people by grifters and thieves. It's just the unfortunate nature of these kind of times. So be very, very careful out there. Be very careful about who you're donating to, who you're sending your money to. If you don't really know what's happening to it, if it's really being used for relief, or it's really getting to the people that really do need it, maybe steer clear of that organization. All that being said, as a caveat, let's look at the response and what we're seeing and hearing. So this storm rips across Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, as well as North Carolina, and it leaves a path of destruction. And Florida and Georgia were impacted, with really most of the destruction being in Florida. But in Georgia, we've had a lot of downed trees and floods, minor flooding, and mostly it's power line damage, services type damage, utility damage. It's leaving thousands of people without power. There's still thousands of people without power a week later from the storm. We're seeing some of those areas. We're seeing restoration dates for their power well into October, 2 or 3 weeks from the date of the storm. So that is a problem. It requires assistance and support, and the emergency organizations are working around the clock to respond to that. The damage in Florida is somewhat overshadowed by the damage that's happened in western North Carolina, but I wanted to mention that specifically because of that. We need to keep in mind that there is a wide area of damage and destruction that has to be addressed. Now, that's a little bit of cover for the authorities who are handling this, because we have to understand that, this is not a single area. It's not a small area that's impacted by this. And the federal response has to be wide scale. And I'm giving that cover to them to be fair, because I'm about to rip into them. I think agencies like FEMA have a reputation, which is well deserved. But there are a lot of good people who want to do as much as possible. They believe in the mission, and they really do want to respond and support in an emergency, just like they're advertised. But the problem is again, that reputation is real. It's because of people in higher leadership roles making really bad or bureaucratic decisions that the reputation is what it is. And it's because of some bad actors in the lower level roles who maybe take that bureaucracy a little too far. FEMA's reputation has done more to drive the spread of bad information on the internet over the decades than we can even get into here. But it's become this self-feeding beast. They could dispel rumors and misinformation if people believed a word that they say. People don't believe them because their PAOs do not tell the truth. The message that comes out of the political mouths of FEMA is at odds with the reality that people see on the ground. There's just too much dishonesty to casually dismiss. We've just seen it time and time again. We're being told that the government is doing everything that it can to support the relief efforts in North Carolina, but we're not really seeing that on the ground. What we are seeing is, yes, some government, and when I say government, I'm speaking of federal government, some support is coming in. The response, however, has largely been local and state level. And it's even really largely been individual volunteers who just step up and do the work that, the way that good people have done for centuries. I know a good many people who are in the area on a personal level and who are involved in the efforts. I have sources across the whole scope of this. Like I said, I don't live very far outside of the damage area myself. So let me tell you what I'm seeing. Many of you know that I am in Civil Air Patrol. CAP's response has been limited from my perspective, what I have seen. I know that North Carolina Wing has flown missions, but I do not know the level of that response. I can get that information or dig in and find some of that information. I have not yet. I suspect that they are doing work, but I know that Georgia has not been asked to support them in their mission at this time, which is unusual. I know that FEMA has a CAP damage assessment team working satellite imagery to look at the before and after images to assess the damage that's been done. That's all that I'm aware of. There were some things that Georgia Wing was asked to do in support of efforts in South Georgia. Very small response. And this is not a dig at CAP, by the way. I'm not trying to say that. We're doing what we're asked to do. Rather, this is a dig at higher levels of government because I believe that the request just has not been sent. I think CAP is not being heavily utilized because the feds, for whatever reason, have not called upon us to assist. It's not for the lack of want from CAP volunteers. We're getting a fairly regular situation report that just keeps saying, hey, stand by. We'll let you know more when we know more and be ready to go when we get the word. The word's just not coming. I know that an entire brigade of the 82nd Airborne was given a Warno to prepare for deployment to Asheville. But shortly after the attack on by Iran on Israel, that Warno was modified, and it significantly reduced the size of the deployment to just a couple of companies and attachments. As far as I know, those units have not fully deployed themselves. That may be stale information on my part. If you know more about that, pass it on, please. That would be good to know. But again, that's very telling. I know that many, many, many people who live in the mountains are self-supporting. They're working their local areas to clean up and distribute relief that they can get. My local area has multiple collection points for supplies, and the local Walmart and grocery stores have sold out of a lot of things that I believe are being collected and donated to this relief effort via churches and local business groups. That effort is sending the supplies to these affected areas and working with distribution points to get the supplies up into the kind of back hollows and little back area places in the mountains for whoever's cut off there. That's the will and drive of the people who live there. There are a lot of stories about some of those isolated people. Many are likely victims of floods or mudslides if they've not managed to contact somebody yet. But there are a lot of people who are just cut off from communications because they don't have power, and cell service where their home is at is most likely just non-existent, even in good times. It's spotty for me, for example, all the time. So many people will emerge in a few more days, as contact effort keeps going, and we'll have a better understanding of how some of these small communities and small areas, how they made out. there are stories coming out of Asheville and the surrounding small towns that give the impression that there are far more people who are victims of this than what we know. As to my comment earlier about the death toll, this is the main driver of why I wanted to caution you about some of the stories that we're seeing online. I'm not trying to minimize the death toll. Like I said, I'm leaning the other way. I think the toll will likely be much higher than we're told, because Asheville is a progressive landfill in the middle of a very conservative area. Consequently, Asheville had a very large homeless population. They're living off the social services and the local enablers who are there. It's very likely, given the nature of this storm, that those homeless people got very little information about it, and a large number of them were likely lost in the flooding. In addition to that, I have seen videos showing coffins being washed down fast-flowing rivers, so it's entirely possible that graves have been exposed from the flooding and bodies have been brought up in that debris. Some of these remains that have been found or being seen may not have been recent. This happened in South Georgia many, many years ago, early 2000s. If I remember correctly, I want to say it was after Katrina, but there was another hurricane that came through, very similar path to Helene, and a lot of flooding that took place around the Americus, Georgia area, and that's exactly what happened. Bodies came to the surface, old graves were exposed, coffins washed down, and it took ages for them to locate and identify bodies and rebury them, and some were never relocated. So that is entirely possible that the stories of lots of bodies in this storm damage, they could be entirely true. They may just be, those aren't recent bodies. We don't know. We don't know for sure if these were people killed by the storm or what. So I think that means the numbers are going to be very vague and very unreliable, and the true impact is not going to be really known to those of us outside of officialdom, and even the officials may not ever truly know how many people were killed by this storm. Now, moving back to the volunteers, we've seen authorities flexing their muscle and putting all kinds of barriers into place for people who want to self-deploy, as it were, and help out. On the one hand, this is kind of understandable. You have a surge of people coming into an area that has been damaged and destroyed, and they mean well. They're there to help out, but they end up kind of getting in the way more than they do helping, and they become a logistical problem on their own. And now you're not just supplying or trying to support the people who are impacted by the damage, you're trying to support the first responders and the second responders and the third responders. And so I can understand why there's this desire for coordination and setting up boundaries and things like this by the people whose job it is to do that. But on the other hand, telling people you're going to put them in jail for helping, or that they have to get all of these permits to help out, is just mind-numbingly stupid. And it's so typical of government functionaries that you got to just tell these people to pound sand and just go do what you got to do, okay? I know the story of the helicopter pilot that was told that he'd be arrested if he went back to rescue the husband of the couple that he found, the woman he picked up, took her to safety at a local fire helicopter point, and they told him that he couldn't just be up there rescuing people on his own. He's causing problems, and he's going to be arrested if he goes back to get the husband. Well, he went back anyway to tell the husband, hey, I can't pick you up. But why didn't you just pick him up and take him somewhere else? You know, That's the thing. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. There has to be a medium here, folks. That's one of these things FEMA is supposed to do. They're supposed to coordinate the resources that show up from outside of the damaged area. What seems to happen far too much, though, is that the feds come in and they grab up the local hotel rooms, and you've got feds filling up this whole hotel, and they're putting people that are kind of on their approved list in facilities, and they're not even letting people who are refugees from it stay in these areas. And they flex their muscle over the locals, and then they tell people who want to help to go fill out forms for days, or they tell them to go away completely, which is way worse. And all in all, this looks very much like a failure on the part of the feds. It's another Katrina-level failure, albeit on a far more localized impact area. So what is left for you to decide is whether this failure's been intentionally orchestrated, or if it's just good old-fashioned government incompetence. Now, I lean more towards the incompetence, but the politics can't be dismissed here. I suspect it's more of a combination there, but let me kind of break it down. There's no question that higher government is incompetent, okay? And mid-level government is often incompetent, and lower-level government is often incompetent. Not always, but sometimes. That's a given, okay? That's a fact. I think the politics is twofold. We know this is a conservative area, and it's not heavily populated, Asheville being the exception to that. But overall, that is the case. So I think the politics are, let's not put too much focus on these areas where we need to be spending money somewhere else. And I think it comes down to the money, or at least that's the handle that they have on it. Somewhere higher up, someone is saying, well, we just don't have the funds for this. Which is a lie, but at the same time, it's a truth. The money's there, it's just being sent to other things that the administration favors. If the administration wanted to support the efforts here, they would be. They'd at least be giving lip service to the, FEMA's on scene and we'll be opening the checkbook to help out wherever it's needed. That's not even being presented. That line, that narrative is not even being painted. Even as a falsehood. They're openly telling people that they're not going to be helping. There's not going to be a lot of federal money spent to relieve this area. Very much like Maui. Ask yourself, why is that? Now, you can speculate that it's related to mining rights or a land purchase or whatever. I've seen those stories reported out there. It could be. I don't know for sure. I think it's more to do with spite and hate myself, but it may very well be that there is some underlying motivation or some parallel motivation going on there. I think it's more that these people just hate the idea of people living in the mountains being outside of their control. And they're not going to give up the opportunity to reduce the numbers of people who are doing that. They're not going to help these people remain outside of their control. Now, there are a lot of lessons to be learned from this, but let me leave you with this one. While it looks very much like this once-in-a-century storm has exposed a weakness in the isolated communities, I disagree with that. I think this storm has taught a lot of locals a lesson that many of us learned a long time ago and came up here for the very reasons that we're seeing play out. And that is that no one is coming to save you. You will be on your own. Expect to self-rescue and expect to have to survive with little to no outside effort. This lesson scales up a bit. As I said, there are locals that will help and do what they can. The point is that our local communities must expect to do for ourselves and help ourselves. It's a hard lesson, learned the hard way for some. Now that's all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the Cold Fury blog, and I will see you on the next episode.